Hello, my name is Yvonne. I'm with JK Lifestyle with Yvonne. Today, we're joined with Heather Melville. She's a certified relationship coach. I have my oldies but goodies, Koya, Bakare. I have Teresa L'Heuereux. And I was crying just a second ago because um, I wanted them so badly to come, and they didn't let me down. They came. So I appreciate it. Today, I invited Heather Melville because she's a certified relationship coach too. But before that, she was an electrical engineer. What made you change?
A lot of things there. And I kind of go back, being a relationship coach, I kind of look back at my previous relationship and I start to realize there was a lot of choices that I made that were not really for me. They were for other people, they were for my ex. And one of them was electrical engineering. So many times I heard people saying, you should do engineering. You're really good at math. And I am, but it's not what my passion is. It's not what drives me. And I was in a situation where I really needed to make money. I really needed to have something set. And, you've got your pressure of your parents, your family, like, where's your life going? What is your career? And so I did that, and I don't regret it because I met my fiance because I was an engineer. But during that time, I realized it was not for me. Like I'm a people person. I want to talk to people. I want to listen to people, and I want to come from the heart. And mathematics is much more logical. So
Mhm.
I finally found life coaching, and I was like, okay, I'll get my certification, just how to understand people, how to talk to people, how to ask questions to kind of pull the solution out. And then I realized, okay, well, what do I have experience in? Oh, I have experience in a toxic relationship, and I think that I can help women coming out of a toxic relationship move them from a space of being broken, unlovable, confused, lost, really hurt, and move them into a space where they're enlivened. They're embracing life. They're happy with themselves. They love themselves, and it moves them into this space where they can start to begin to attract the type of love that they want. So yeah, I realized that was my purpose.
So you basically took your own experience with being in a toxic relationship. What was the point that made you move away from that?
Wow, that's a loaded question, and I definitely get that a lot when others are trying to break out of that same
Mhm.
cycle, and especially diving really deep into like, why did I stay? What were the red flags that I missed, and really understanding who I was before that. And so I did a deep dive into, okay, well, why did I stay, and what were the steps I took to break away from that? And I will attribute it to a lot of different things, but mainly it was giving myself space to come back to myself and realize, whoa, 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 I deserve much more than this. And I was, I lived up in Flagstaff, Arizona at the time, and I was doing a lot of hiking. So I was getting a lot of space by myself to really think, okay, is this what I want? I was already 8 years in this relationship, and how many times he hit me, I don't have enough hands for. So it's just like, okay, is this what I'm going to continue on in the next 5 years? And with 8 years, usually in a relationship, the next step is marriage, or otherwise you're just wasting each other's time. And I thought, gosh, could I be married to somebody who continues to treat me this way? And then the thought was kids. How could I raise kids in this world and tell them, hey, this is how you're supposed to treat a woman, but just ignore what your dad does to me? And that one really, really hit me so hard that I was like, no, I'm worthy of more. And I would rather be alone than spend another day dealing with this kind of stuff. And, it kind of comes back to, why do we stay in relationships for so long? Usually there's a fear of being alone, fear that we won't be loved, fear that never find the person, we'll never be enough. But I had gotten to that point where it was like, screw it. I'll be alone. I'd rather be alone. I'm better company than this. So it was a lot of understanding, and it took me hindsight to realize all of that. It took me coming back and researching and understanding where my clients are at to realize, like, oh, that's what I did. I did no contact with him. I, started getting into myself, developing like passions, and just getting here, thinking about what I really want in life. And do I have to settle for whatever I'm given, these breadcrumbs of love that I'm given?
I was just wondering, sometimes do people stay in relationships because when they were a child, they saw certain things happen in that relationship. So it's not so startling. It's not something that they haven't seen before. That
Right.
sometimes
Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah. And that's actually a lot of the research that I do, just to kind of understand where, there's a diverse of clients and diverse of different types of toxic relationships. And one of the key things is, usually this type of relationship might have been modeled for you so that it doesn't feel strange. It doesn't feel wrong. It feels kind of normal. And there are like little attributes, like, the people pleasing technique, where we're taught that we have to be perfect in order to be loved, and we have to please people and make them happy. And you can see that in toxic relationships, that you're constantly striving to make them happy, walking on eggshells so you don't disturb the peace. So it's all brain chemistry as well, that your brain has been wired to accept certain situations and certain emotions as normal.
That's
May
one
I, may I
thing.
ask? I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
Koya.
May I ask a question? Because I'm thinking about myself, not in a hubris way, but where I've been in circumstances that weren't the best. I would say toxic, but I also had an existing toxic relationship with myself, and so I was very much accepting of certain behaviors, certain language. Definitely was in my excuse with myself was, oh, I'll just fight back, right? But I was also considering my second attempt for suicide. I also was dealing with sexual abuse and all these different things. So I'm curious, have you found, and not self-blaming the victim, but that they're also dealing with these internal demons that they're trying to fight off themselves, and may not have the capacity to fight off this external force. I found I was trying to save myself, but also trying to save this person and failing egregiously at both.
Yeah, yeah. I loved the way you said that too, because it is 100% true. A toxic relationship with yourself, because that is key right there. And I start to realize, again, I go back to my own experience, that who I was before when I got into this relationship was somebody with low self-esteem and just desperate for love and ready for whatever would come my way, even if it meant, being hit or being mentally abused. So yeah, it really starts with yourself, and that's something I teach my clients, because that's where the change happens, right? We don't have any power to change anybody else except for ourselves. We can influence them, but we can't change other people. We can only change ourselves. And so it's so crazy that you start to realize you had a toxic relationship with yourself before you even got into it. And then you mentioned too, like, kind of like that codependency, where you're trying to be the savior for somebody else. You're trying to heal somebody else. And it could be because you're trying to distract yourself from healing yourself. And so it's so interesting. And I love the way you said that.
That's what I was thinking too, because if you have low self-esteem, like say if you were a child and no one told you you're special, you know, I love you, you know, just made you feel like you were a wonderful person, worthy of love. So you grow up, maybe they criticize you a lot. And then sometimes I wonder if when you go to get your partner, your loved one, the person you're in a loving relationship with, I wonder if they can sense that. And so when they start telling you things to make you feel like you're not a lovable type person, you start listening to them. Yeah, see, even they do it. Let me try to work harder so they'll care about me. So they'll see that I'm a nice person, or I'm a good person, or I'm a outstanding person. But you're looking for that person to validate you, but it's not happening. And maybe you stay there, keep hoping that it will change, it will get better, or they'll finally see your worth. But I think you're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah. Well, anytime that we're searching for validation outside of ourselves is a losing battle. It has to come from within here. And so it's interesting because what I've come to realize that this self-worth that we talk about, that we throw this word around of, you were worthy, you were worthy. Where does that come from? That's because you're alive. No matter who you are, because you are alive, you are worthy of love and respect. You don't have to prove it to anybody. You don't have to do anything. There's no accomplishments or anything like that. And if there was, who decides that? Who decides the standards of what you get to deem yourself as worthy? And then who's the judger? Because it doesn't really make sense. And it's crazy because then you do start to kind of, and I don't want to think badly of people. I don't think badly of my ex anymore. I have forgiven him. Not that I had to sit there and tell him I forgave him. I've forgiven him within myself, which is something a lot of us need to learn, that forgiveness happens here as well. But hold on, lost train of thought. Right. So I don't think that he consciously knew, oh, she's got low self-esteem, let me link to her, because then I'll just berate her and she'll never leave me and it'll be great. I don't think he consciously did that, but subconsciously, he was hurting, and the way he did that, the way he could relieve himself, is hurt others, project it onto other people. And my codependent, low self-esteem self was like, ooh, somebody to heal, somebody to focus on outside of myself so I don't have to work on me. And so it just perpetuates that idea that you're not worthy, you're unlovable. And like you said, hey, I've always thought this about myself, and here's another person proving my point. I am right.
How do you think a person feels when they finally get out of a toxic relationship?
It's a mixed bag of emotions, very confusing. And that's why I want to help people just right at that moment, because I remember for me, and I always say this, I think that, I don't know where I've heard this, but they say that women break up 6 months before they actually do it. And that was so true for me. Even in our last year, he would say some things, like I was going for my electrical engineering job interview, and he would text me and say, good luck with your low self-esteem. And I just was like, you know what? I need a break. And then of course he comes back, oh, so you can sleep with other guys. And it's like, no, I need a break from you. I just need to not talk to you anymore. So we took a couple of breaks before I finally was like, no, I'm done. But I realized that I had moments where I was sad, but I couldn't really understand why I was sad, because it's like, well, I'm sad for what? For not having to be abused anymore, for not having to walk on eggshells. So it was like sadness in the sense that something was ending. But then, and this is the confusing part, because it was like, well, I'm also feeling very relieved. Like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I no longer have to worry about, making sure I call them enough, making sure I talk to them enough, making sure that I ease whatever potential conflict is happening, because his issues he likes to project onto me. And so it was a very interesting time, because I was relieved. I was kind of excited for this new chapter. I was also sad that I was alone. I was upset with myself because of staying for so long. And so I was with him from 21 to 29. All basically my 20s just gone. And I look back and I remember so many memories of me just like feeling constricted, feeling caged, and not being free. And I mean, maybe I dodged the bullet of potentially sleeping around in my 20s and contracting some STD, but I don't also think that I was deserving of that treatment. And I feel like I missed out on my 20s. So there was just so many different emotions I was feeling, and then being upset at him and angry at him for the way he treated me and how I now had to bury myself out, or, dig myself out of this hole that I was in of like trying to rebuild myself. So it's a very mixed bag of feelings. And I'm not sure if that's everybody, but for me, it was so confusing to be relieved but angry and upset and but excited. It's just very confusing, and that's where I want to help women work through that, hone in on that excitement part, that relieved part, and then alleviate that anger, like let that anger go. And part of that is maybe punching a bag, punching a pillow, or reanalyzing what everything happened, and then just getting in touch with yourself again.
People need to realize is all those emotions you were just talking about, they're all real, and there's a huge bag of even more. But what you're allowed to do is grieve for the relationship that you thought you were going to have. And a lot of people don't do that. Like when you meet someone, you don't say, oh, this is going to end bad. No, you say, oh my gosh, I can imagine Christmas with him. And I can imagine taking a vacation with him and going on a
Mhm.
cruise. And I can't wait to fly for the first time with him. Is he like the aisle or does he like the window? You know, so you're allowed to grieve for that, what you lost, what you thought you were going to have. And a lot of people don't allow themselves that. They think, oh my, and then when you do grieve, like if someone dies, you're allowed to be sad. Then the next day you go, oh gosh, I remember when, and you get happy, you get excited. You're allowed to do that with a toxic relationship. You're allowed to grieve for what you wanted, what you thought it was going to be. I didn't miss him. I miss what I thought I was going to have. And that's where a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, God, I feel, one day I'm sad, just like you said, Heather. One day you're sad, the next day you're excited, the next day you're mad at yourself. That you're allowed to feel those things. And I tell people, you will never get past this point unless you do that. Allow yourself to go through those feelings.
Wow, you nailed it too. I really love exactly what you said, the that you're not missing him, you're missing what the relationship could have been, what you had been hoping for. And that's
Right.
actually another factor that keeps us staying, right? We're hoping that they'll change. We're hoping that
Yeah.
one day a light bulb will come off and be like, "Oh, I love you. I shouldn't be treating you like this."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you're right. I mean, that's the other thing I tell my clients too is like every emotion is valid because you're
Yes.
having it's valid and you
It's
need to
just
go.
when you get stuck in an emotion. If you
Mhm.
get stuck in one and you're pissed off for days, or you're mad for days, or you're angry for days, or even too happy for days, because that can be a false positive, like you're kind of pregnant or not, it can be that way. And a lot of people don't understand that you have to go through all those. It's like I was working with someone and she lost, I worked with her and her husband. She lost her husband and she was there and tried to revive him when he was dying. And that just was a whole nother level. But the thing is, she didn't allow herself, I said, go to the graveyard and scream at Justin. How dare you leave me? Why did you leave me with kids? I can't do this. Go ahead and do that. Because you know what's going to happen? You get that out, then you're going to be like, gosh, we had a good marriage. It's
Oh,
quantity, it's quality, not quantity. And so I made sure that she went through all of those, because what will happen is as you turn the wheel and your life gets faster and faster and better, all those weird emotions, like jealousy or whatever, they fall off. And then what's going to finally happen is you're going to have all those good feelings. I remember very distinctly getting away from my abuser, and it was a Sunday afternoon. I didn't have to work. I took a shower. I remember exactly what I put on. I had a brand new pair of wedges, espadrille wedges. I remember that. And jeans. and some kind of shirt, and did my hair, makeup, whatever. And I went down to the local, little ice cream place, and I got myself an ice cream cone, and I sat outside and ate that cone. Nobody told me I was ugly. Nobody told me, how dare you eat something outside. Nobody told me, oh, you just spent $8 on an ice cream cone. I remember that the sun was on my face, and that was when I took my healing to the next level. So you have to do those things. Allow yourself to do those things.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because if you keep those emotions, if you don't move through those emotions, they stay in your body as well. And I mean,
Well,
they
they
talk about,
manifest themselves in unbelievable ways.
oh yeah,
I know so many people that are stuck in the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, and they're starting to have, headaches. They can't sleep, their back hurts, and it's so much turmoil inside, they can't function from a metabolic standpoint. And a lot of people do not understand that. And when you make them see you're not sleeping well because you're pissed off at him still, it's been 5 years, give it up, let him go, move on. Let's go through all those emotions so that you can truly have a good relationship, and find someone that truly values you.
well, and I also kind of come at it too from like a engineering perspective, because I start like, people are like, oh well, emotions, they don't mean anything, there's no energy behind them. But it's like, okay, well, my engineering brain is going to be like, okay, well, every time you have an emotion, there's a chemical reaction, some type of hormone is released within you, and then that has some
Good
type
or
of,
bad, good or
right,
bad.
yeah, good or bad. And so then you have that energy within you. And then if it stays and it's stuck somewhere, then, yeah, you go into, maybe headaches, but maybe even worse. We're finding out that stress is the number one killer. All
Mhm.
these fake sugars we have and all of these preservatives, they're not going to kill us as quickly as
No,
stress is going
it's
to kill
it's the
us.
stress, and that is where it starts. And stress can be good or bad as well.
Right.
And a
Right.
lot of people don't allow themselves to go to the gym or take a walk. I deliberately got rescue huskies. I have two huge huskies at my feet right now. I have to walk them no matter how I feel. I have to walk them. And I tell some of my clients, come to the house, grab one of the huskies, go
Mhm.
far, because you
Mhm.
can't just go down the end of the street. You got to go far. But it's and that day that I went and got that ice cream cone was a good day. I felt good. I looked in the mirror. I said, "Man, let's go get us some ice cream," because I was never allowed to get ice cream before. When I was with him, we were both competing. You know, he was like, a prisoner. He could eat the exact same thing every single day, but every now and then I wanted to cheat, and couldn't have ice cream. So I said, I'm going to go get myself an ice cream cone. So I took like an hour and a half. I did a facial and, the whole 9 yards. And that was a happy day. And when you lean into those happy days, and a lot of people look for triggers. Well, my favorite word are glimmers. That was a glimmer day because I saw the light. I saw that, I am worth it. I am worth looking pretty. I am worth it. I went and got the car washed, and I felt great for an ice cream cone.
Mhm.
It was like I had a date with a daggone ice cream cone. But I
I know you're
remember
telling
that.
me ice cream, and I'm like, oh, where's my ice cream?
I
I'm in
know, right?
Tucson,
Me
95.
too. I
But
love.
but a lot of people that are going through toxic relationships, they're victims, survivors, or know someone who is, they don't allow themselves to lean into the glimmers and lean away from the triggers.
And I think it's probably because they don't trust those glimmers, right? Because
Correct.
so many times, like, oh, this was a happy moment, but then something happened, set the other person off, and just gone.
Right. But when you're in control of that glimmer, it's like I was in control. Did I want to wash my hair? Did I want to put it up? Did I want to put on a baseball hat? Did I want to wear a red lipstick or pink lipstick? I was in control of that whole memory. And that was probably 15 years ago. And I still remember those daggone shoes. I still remember the way the sun felt on my face.
Mhm.
And
You
you
know,
have to make sure that you file those good times. As I
You
said,
know,
you lean into glimmers and pull away from the triggers.
one of the things that I was always thought about was that sometimes when people leave a relationship, they jump into another one without going through and working through a lot of things. And I always feel like if you don't take time to get your equilibrium, to figure out what happened in that relationship, how it affected you, whatever, I think you'll repeat it. I think you'll find somebody else and you'll repeat it unless you sit down and really analyze what it is that you really want, what it is you don't want, and compare that to what you walked away from. So,
well, and people aren't taking stock of what happened in that relationship. And they're just, it's like he did this, he did this, he did this. Okay, I'm going to leave him. Wait a minute, this guy over here, he's doing this, this, and this. Well, that's normal. That feels comfortable. I feel safe. I'm just going to continue it right over here. And forgot all about that middle part that we just talked about. What Heather and I were just talking about. That healing and making sure that you're finding, as you say, Yvonne, the balance inside of yourself. You have to find that, and you have to realize your worth. And we are allowed to have worth from just being born. And a lot of people, they go, oh, I don't understand that. Well, it's like we should have a certain amount of respect, and it should go up or down depending on what we say and do. But we have to make sure that people that have been in a toxic relationship take account and really step back and find themselves again, because they lost themselves. I know, Yvonne, you've read my book. In my book, I talk about having a mask by the door. Now, when I was in that relationship, I was competing. I was a personal trainer. I had to be, oh my gosh, you're amazing. 5 more, boo, boo, boo. And it's very hard to do that when you're being abused.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is these
Teresa,
toxic relationships, they affect everything in your life. What were you going to say, Koya?
I was curious, and not to segue, but I'm thinking about a couple of scenarios where I know individuals in toxic relationships, but it's with their job and it's with their family. So could we use that same framework in, because what I heard, we're hoping to have something and it doesn't manifest that way, and so now we're going through our mourning period. Could we use those same tactics as when we need to leave, as it aligns to align it to a mother or a father that's disrespectful, abusive, or a supervisor or manager who's being just a tyrant with the person at work?
Well, and I
Well,
think it's so true, because you look at those relationships, you look at your work, and are you showing up as somebody who truly believes they're worthy of everything the universe has to offer, or are you showing up who doesn't believe believes they have to earn to get something? And then the other thing is, like you said, yes, if you need to kind of like mourn what you believed you were going to be getting from that, and it didn't happen, so it's exactly what you said, even in all areas. And you can see toxic relationships in general, they affect everything. Like Teresa was saying, I remember I would have to go to work, and at the time I was a bartender, and I would have this huge fight with my ex, and I couldn't show up as myself. I was upset, and it was very hard for me to have to like put on this face for my customers, like, oh, you're having a great day. Me too. Not really,
this is a great segment, but it's time for us to go.
Oh gosh.
Doesn't mean we can't meet again, but it's time for us to go. Okay.
That was quick.
Yeah, it was. Well, when you have good people, it's quick. Teresa, tell the name of your book.
It's My Rock, My Hard Place. I just happen to have it right here.
Oh, I like that.
Love it.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you drop me your address, I'll send you one. Heather or Koya, either one.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to read it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually gave it to someone that I just met about a month ago, and I saw her, and she said, I got through the first 100 pages. That's all she said. I said, okay. And then she said, a couple days later, she said, I read the whole book.
Huh.
And then she just stood there and she said, I don't know how you did it. I said, well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. So,
Okay.
Absolutely. You're included on the emails, right?
yes. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today, Heather Melville,
Thank you.
Koya Bakare,
Thank you.
Teresa L'Heuereux.
My
I'm
pleasure.
so glad that y'all came today. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.